This is the first part of a series of presentations on the Opium Wars. My name is Sean Han. I am in grade 8 of Class D of Peitong School. And this presentation will be talking about the reasons of the Opium Wars and talk a little bit about the first Opium Wars. The main points you have to know here is addiction, prohibition, the trade balance, confiscation of opium, and results of the first Opium War. Now, the Opium Wars are a series of wars, actually it's two wars, that were fought between mainly two countries, the Qing Chinese and the British. More specifically, the East India Company, which had actually had a lot of ports and lots of claims around the world, spanning all the way from Africa, all the way to the Asia, and all they needed was literally China. But then again, Chinese people literally didn't really like the West as well too. They didn't really need things. In fact, they literally only had like several ports that were open for outside trade. And later on, that turned into only one port, Canton, which is Guangzhou. And of course, this was pretty annoying because they also had a bunch of rules and regulations that were instated upon them as well too. These are the rules and regulations, and they were pretty hefty and pretty limiting on what Western people can do for free trade. So there's almost no free trade. And so a man from Canton goes all the way to Beijing and to just go ahead and make his complaint. And this would have been normal in England, where you could go ahead and make a complaint if something's wrong on the government level. But instead of going through all the necessary officials to go ahead and see the emperor, basically to the Chinese eyes, this one rowdy British foreigner just went all the way towards the king without any regard to official standards. That was, of course, seen as negative, and so he was seen terribly. And then again, merchants were seen as the lowest class of jobs in the Chinese Empire, in this case, the Qing Empire. And so, of course, they just had to go ahead and wait a little bit. England sent them a little ambassador, but then again, he wouldn't kowtow towards the emperor. And then, of course, things started happening. They realized that the Chinese were going to just add more regulations after this incident, which made things worse, and so they needed to find a substance that the Chinese would want to trade all those great, good Chinese goods for, especially tea. In fact, back then, 10 million pounds of tea went ahead and were sold. 10 million pounds of tea was being imported into the country as well too. 5% of an actual average house's income was spent on tea alone. 5%. Problem was they were importing more than they were exporting, and that there was a trade deficit. China didn't really want Western goods. They need practicality, not ingenuity. So they literally didn't really want to trade. That is until the English found out about opium. The English, since they lost the 13 colonies in America and their South American silver mines, they needed to find a new way to make money fast. They originally planned to use most of the fertile soil in India to grow cotton. But what else also grows on that good soil? Apparently, poppies. And opium poppies were starting to be grown. And one problem, it was actually illegal. It was illegal to sell opium in China. The Chinese have been introduced to opium since the 7th century AD, and by the 18th century, the opium addiction was a huge problem that they literally had to ban it. And so they literally needed a way to go ahead and sell opium into the country. And conveniently, they controlled one port in India, somewhere in this area, and they opened a shop in that area as well too. They basically said this: hey, we have opium. I don't really know what you will do with it, but I don't really care. Enjoy. And from then on, they literally let the smugglers go ahead and get it to cross Nepal and all the way into Qing, China. So now the Chinese have an opium problem at hand, and they can't really do anything about it except probably find the smuggling routes and stop them. But there's not much they can do about that as well too. So what do? They decide to go on full-fledged war. There was a ship called the Arrow that will be mentioned in the Second Opium Wars, but something similar to that ship. Basically, they sacked a ship, they confiscated a bunch of opium. England was like, "Yeah, did they just go ahead and steal like a bunch, like a king's ransom of opium?" And this is what they did. They started bombing Canton, and Canton fell in just a few days, in a few months, and afterwards, Canton's governor was deposed. It was replaced with a new governor, and then they decided to go ahead and syndicate. Since they made their point, they went ahead and demanded some regulations. Afterwards, they went to Beijing. They blocked a port. They also took control of Nanjing, and then, well, Beijing was next. They started sacking the Summer Palace. And last but not least, this is what happened. The emperor finally realized, okay, I may have been a little drastic here. I probably should have negotiated when I could, but since I still have a chance of negotiation, let's do it. Negotiate while you still can. And of course, they went ahead and gave really harsh terms. Like really harsh. They had to go ahead and open 5 ports. To Western trade, and so they would also have to let Christian missionaries in, and Hong Kong would be Britain's. The only thing that the Chinese wouldn't comply with, they complied with everything except this one. Christian missionaries were not allowed in. That was a no-no. And yeah, it was such an actual sensitive topic that neither side was actually wanting to go ahead and bring it up. And then the Treaty of Nanjing was signed after the First Opium War was over. So the reasons for the Opium Wars were basically opium, lack of trade, and China not opening themselves to the West, Britain trying to make a good profit and get China's goods home. Number 4, both of them just wanted a good war. For their own sides and for their own reasons. And that's it. Thank you for watching this presentation on the reasons of the Opium Wars and the First Opium Wars. I will hopefully see you in my second presentation. Thank you.